Go.
Good morning, my name is Leonardo Alcantara, and today I'll be discussing the fascinating connection between music, nostalgia, and identity. My presentation is titled The Power of Music, How It Triggers Nostalgia and Shapes Personal and Cultural Identity. I will explore why music has such a strong impact on our memories, connect this idea to research, and propose ways we can engage with nostalgia more meaningfully. Think about a song that instantly reminds you of a specific moment. Maybe it's your first concert or a childhood road trip. This is no coincidence. Research shows that music has a deep connection with memory and emotion. But does this reliance on nostalgia have wider implications? Let's explore further. Before we dive into the research, let's pause and understand why this connection between music and memory is so powerful. Music isn't just background noise, it's a tool our brains use to store, organize, and relive experiences. It's deeply embedded in our emotional memory system, and we often associate it with important life events. In fact, studies show that familiar songs activate areas like the amygdala and the hippocampus, the very regions responsible for emotion, memory, and pleasure. So when you feel chills from a song that reminds you of high school or a late night drive, that's not random, it's biology. My research was inspired by two AP stimulus materials. First, John Noberg's False Nostalgia argues that nostalgia often romanticizes the past in ways that distort reality. This idea applies to music industry where old songs are marketed better than today's music. On the other hand, Deborah Paredes Soledad shows how nostalgia can preserve cultural identity. Selena Quintanilla's music remains central in Latinx cultural memory, proving that nostalgia isn't just personal, it's collective. These sources help me shape my understanding of the complex role nostalgia plays in music and memory. The ability of music to bring back memory is widely recognized, but there are two major problems. First, we don't fully understand how this works. Second, nostalgia is being commercialized by the music industry. Additionally, nostalgia is an important cultural force, particularly in Latinx communities, as Paredes discusses. This brings us to my research question. How does music shape personal and cultural memory, and is nostalgia always beneficial? Scientific research explains why music triggers nostalgia. Studies show that music activates the limbic system, which processes emotions and memories. One of the most interesting effects is the reminiscence pump, where we feel the strongest nostalgia for music from our teenage years. This explains why parents still love the songs they grew up with. Finally, the more familiar a song is, the stronger the memory recall. The music industry knows how nostalgia works and actively exploits it. Record labels re-release classic albums, artists go on reunion tours, and streaming services create nostalgia playlists. This is a marketing strategy. However, nostalgia isn't always commercial. Paredes describes how Latinx communities continue celebrating Selena, showing how nostalgia can be a form of cultural preservation. Research shows that familiar songs play a crucial role in our emotional response. An fMRI study found that familiar music activated emotional and reward-related regions of the brain, including the amygdala and the nucleus accumbens, more than familiar music. But this has a dark side. What we think we might like might not be authentic. It might be a result of repeated exposure, known as the mere exposure effect. This means our feelings aren't always organic, and they can be manipulated by what the industry puts on repeat. Not all nostalgia is based on real experience. John Noberg warns us of false nostalgia, where people feel sentimental about times they never lived. This happens especially in music. Think of Gen Z idealizing the 1980s songs and aesthetics they never actually experienced. The danger here is that nostalgia can distort history, creating a glossy, idealized version of the past that ignores the real struggles and complexities. In this way, nostalgia isn't just personal, it can become politically and socially misleading. Another problem is the meaning of music changes over time. Songs that once had a deep cultural significance are now repurposed for commercials, TikTok trends, or background noise. Media scholar Jose Van Dyke explains how this decontextualization strips songs of their original emotional and cultural power. For example, A song that once represented resistance or heartbreak may now just be a meme soundtrack. We risk forgetting the stories and struggles behind songs if we don't preserve the context. Now, instead of letting nostalgia control us, we can promote the intentional use of nostalgic music to strengthen identity, improve emotional well-being, and preserve cultural memory. Music evoked nostalgia doesn't just feel powerful, it is powerful. Studies show that people are most nostalgic about music tied to personal experiences. And this kind of nostalgia boosts self-esteem, life meaning, and social bonds. In fact, in a study to determine how well predictor variables such as song familiarity, autobiographical salience, emotional arousal, and more, 75% of song participants were considered highly nostalgic. Using this tool intentionally, whether in daily life or therapy, can promote the well-being and reinforce identity. There is also growing medical support for nostalgic music as therapy. In one study, stroke patients who listened to their favorite songs daily showed better recovery and mood and memory. Neuroscientists also found that familiar music activates the brain's reward and memory centers, especially when those songs are tied to meaningful life moments. This shows how nostalgia can be more than just comfort. It can be healing. Nostalgic music is more than personal. It's also cultural. As Paredes explains, Selena's music helps preserve Latinx identity decades after her passing. Jose Van Dyke calls music a cultural time capsule. It carries stories, language, and values through generations. That is why we need to engage with nostalgic music intentionally, not just remember, but to preserve what matters most. Of course, this solution isn't perfect. Nostalgia is highly personal, so not everyone responds the same way. Also, some studies have small samples or lack long-term data. Finally, the music industry manipulation of nostalgia through marketing is tough to control. Still, these challenges don't outweigh the potential benefits. If we treat nostalgic music as a meaningful tool rather than a passive experience, we can unlock these real benefits. It strengthens personal identity, supports mental health, and preserves culture, and even opens up ethical conversations about how nostalgia is used in media. This solution asks us to listen with intention about how music is a bridge between our past and our future. Now, while the benefits of engaging with nostalgia are clear, not everyone agrees with this approach. Some might argue that nostalgia is just a natural emotional reaction. Why analyze it? To that, I'd say, while nostalgia may begin as a natural emotional response, understanding how it works allows us to engage with it more intentionally. Rather than letting nostalgia music passively stir emotions, we can use it purposefully to reconnect with loved ones, preserve cultural stories, and strengthens one's sense of self. In summary, music is a powerful tool that defines both individual and cultural identity. However, nostalgia can be manipulated for profit, or it can be used to strengthen cultural heritage. So I leave you with this thought. What songs will define your future nostalgia? These are my citations.